So today, for the benefit of those who are not here, and we're missing few people today, we've watched the video about phases, and that's a new Linda course that I suggest if you're interested in pursuing Revit registration, certification, sorry. It is working with phases, and it basically works similarly to layers in AutoCAD, where you can have content showing or not showing. And it is a fantastic extra knowledge that you can take to your fourth semester and your final jury project. So I'm going to close this one because we're not going to watch any more tutorials today. The second thing that I want to record for the benefit of people who are not here is I posted on Building Construction Sciences program that you're all enrolled a fantastic video about BIM, and the entry image is quite nice, but it's not showing us here. Let me just run it for a sec. No, it's not showing. So there's a beautiful rendering image, and I might make it a video. It's not very long, that we will watch as part of the rendering information next week. But I think that I posted it for all our students, and I actually made a note that all of you should watch this, because I believe that this is where we as a college should be going, and I believe that that's where you should be going. You were learning last semester with me about LEED accreditation and LEED certification of buildings. And the biggest problem that we're having right now, we have enough smart engineers designing these high-tech buildings, but we don't have enough technicians and technologists and people who are eloquent enough to maintain those buildings. So there is a huge cost involved in post-construction maintenance of the buildings and life cycle of the building, that it's made possible with this 3D visualization and building information modeling. So do yourself a favor, watch it. And unfortunately, there is no course just yet on Linda on just BIM, but I will create a module in our course. And whatever I find, like this presentation, that would be helpful of you, you're going to do yourself a huge favor by watching them. And I'm trying not to post some boring stuff that I watch. I know how you guys operate. I'm going to try to give you the content that's really worth watching, stunning images. And I found one that's actually unbelievable, but it has lots of small text that you have to read on a YouTube with a cute music. So I may actually use some of that information and make our own little presentation. So I would suggest that you watch this. I'm going to close this as well. Then we need to go to our Dropbox. Actually, not a Dropbox. Let's go to home, because I posted under news a couple things that are very important. Finishing line agenda. So, I'm trying to be fair to you. I'm giving you at least 1 week's notice. So we do have dimensioning one-page assignment that I'd like you to do. So we're going to do it today. We're going to record a very quick repeat of what we did with a small group yesterday. I'm going to give you the most important tricks. There is a link under dimensioning module for our course where you can find a link to the video that we watched yesterday. So we're not going to repeat watching it, but I will record how you actually go about this assignment. Please note that I don't want your whole project. I just want one-page main floor plan dimensioned. Okay, so we're going to talk about what the dimensions in our project versus the tutorial. And I'm just asking you for 1 page. So it would be great if you finish it today, just submit it into Dropbox and you're done with that part. We have only 3 weeks left. So I will be looking forward to as much as we can do for our project. That's your great portfolio. The other thing that I posted yesterday is I went through your quiz, and I actually have been quite generous. I listed all of the questions that are on the quiz. You need to go back to information about Revit templates, grids, lots of questions about grids. I guess I watched the video about grids, and I have at least 5 or 6 questions on grids. So do yourself a favor, watch grids. And I didn't alter it. I didn't change it, first of all, because I'm running out of juice and time this semester as well. But secondly, because when you meet with Gary Wicknell next semester, you need to start from grid. So I want you to be fluid with grid. I added grid to my project, and I'm not quite using it yet, but I at least dimension it. And I did not make grid mandatory for your project because it's not a standard procedure for housing. But when you meet with Gary next semester, that's the first thing I want you to impress him with. I want you to go in and start with structural grid for your project, okay? So there's lots of questions about grid, and I left them there. There are questions about units, very simple questions. We're working with the imperial system for residential projects, so I know you will be able to answer what the default is, correct? Accuracy settings, you know, the snaps and how you actually control the accuracy settings. There's a question about CAD linking, which we did. There are questions about selection filtering. Very important question, how you control what you've selected. I don't want you to select and then escape because you've selected too many items. I want you to go into filtering and take the doors or walls out. So I want you to become now a little bit more efficient with how you use Revit. So I left that question and forced you to, if you haven't been using it, to actually watch the video and start using it. View control bar, there's a question about that, and walls and doors. So I'm giving you a list of basically everything that's covered, and that's the quiz that we should have done probably, you know, at least 3 weeks ago, because we finished these topics a long time ago. But I thought it's actually not bad to review those fundamentals, because it is quite possible that if you watch those tutorials only once, you're probably not applying them, just like I wasn't applying them for nearly a year. Okay? So that's the topic. Midterms are all done, and we're moving along quite nicely. So I am going to actually go now to Revit and go back to my project where we need to add some dimensions. So let's record how we add dimensions. We go to plan, and I need you to go to just first floor plan. And I actually will increase my view range so you can actually have so we can have a little bit more room for our dimensions. And for the purpose of dimensioning, I will, better undo that. I will click on one tree and hide this whole category just so we have a little bit more room. So I actually have dimensions. Let's quickly review first what dimensions are required. I kind of listed them. There is an assignment outline. If you go to assignments, I posted the final assignment outline. I've edited slightly yesterday, and I posted the dimensions outline. I'm asking you for one floor plan this week so you can decide on settings. And this is the most important one. If you know how to do dimensions for main floor plan, you're going to do them all. Before I forget, for section drawings, for elevation drawings, please do not repeat these floor plan dimensions. On sections, we show dimensions between levels, your elevations, top of a floor to top of the floor, basement floor, ceiling heights, window heights, sill heights, top of the roof possibly. We show roof slope, but we don't show dimensions that belong on a plan. So ultimately, we're going to do plan to dimension plans first. I have a grid, and if you have done the grid, then you need to dimension between grid lines. Immediately when you do first string of dimensions, which is under annotate, but you also have it on this quick access toolbar. So if you click on this one, you will be probably good, because align is the type of dimension you will be using most of the time. But everything you need to know about noting your drawings is under annotate, and the first is align. So if you do absolutely nothing, you will be taken to a default, which is slightly different than what I have in my project. I believe that per default, you will be taken to not 332s. I made my dimensions smaller. I think, I don't remember. Oh no, this is a default. This is a default. I just changed the text height. So if you go to default and you start your dimensions, I'll escape that. Then you pick items, and as you move your mouse, you could dimension from anything that's part of your model. So you want to be, you know, eloquent and smart, and make sure that you're picking the right things, zooming in and out as you need. But for grid, it's relatively simple as long as you don't mix it up with your contour lines or some other object. So for doing dimensions, you could probably hide lots of elements that you don't need. Oh, I'm dimensioning. Why am I not picking this? You see how Revit is smart? because I'm talking to you and I'm picking on section line, not a grid line. So look how smart Revit is, and I actually didn't know this. It knows that that's not the item to be dimensioned. It's not model. Remember, that's the annotation that's only set in this view. So let's keep going to my grid lines, and you keep going, zooming in and out, picking the correct lines, and this is the trick number 1. Don't pick here, don't hit enter, don't hit escape. You need to click now on the location, and you have to click on the outside in the empty space. If you don't click in the empty space, Revit wants to be clicking for more dimensions. Okay, so we click. Now you have a dimension line that you can alter. So if it's there and if it's looking good, remember that we could rehash something else. Remember this zoom to sheet size. This is a very close to your set scale and sheet of paper that you've designed. Remember that from the beginning. So this is a good way to kind of plus minus see how the dimensions are going to look. But ultimately, I'm going to come closer and look at it, and then you can select it. And obviously, when you see the grip, then you know that you can do something with it. You can place your dimension lines somewhere else if they're colliding with your couch or room name. You can take these grips and you can alter them to something else. But the most important thing is once you select this dimension line, you can do a couple things with it. You can edit this witness line and keep going. So if you forgot to locate the grid line from the property line, you just click on it, and then remember again, no escape, no enter, the whole thing will disappear. Click on the outside. We've added a line. The next thing, to subtract the line, while it's still selected, go close with your mouse to the dimension that you want to select. So let's say that one, I'll change my mind. I'm not going to do it here. I'll do it somewhere else. Tab until this dimension is selected, and then you can, oops, the same thing happened yesterday. I had to kind of tab it twice. So I think we need to tab and click on it. That's it. Okay, so those are the things that I had to struggle with. I don't want you to struggle with a million times. For removing dimension line, let's do it again. Will it work? It worked. So let's do it again. Undo, because it's a little bit tricky. Select the line, put your mouse close to where you want to be. Tab, Revit knows where you have your mouse and it takes you there. Click on this one. You only can remove this dimension from the string if you see on the screen only that screen. And the way to do it is to tab until it's selected thicker and then click on it. That's what I just did. And remove. Okay. So that's alteration number 2, because first one was moving grips and moving the text, which is similar to AutoCAD. But if you have this selected, there are a couple of other things that you might want to use. If for whatever reason this center line 4 and 5 have to be locked, then lock it. If that's the grid line that cannot be altered by accident or by someone else, lock it. The next thing is, remember that just like everything else, dimension line is selected and it has its own properties. You can change the style. There are different styles. Most likely you won't. But more importantly, you can edit type. And this works similarly to dimension variables in CAD that you were learning last year. And you can make your changes here if you want your dimensions to look different. The most important change that I actually put in the assignment outline that I'm making absolutely mandatory. I don't want your portfolio to have fractions of an inch. It will just look horrific. Fractions of an inch for our project belong to details, wall sections. They don't belong on overall plans and elevations. So I am forcing you to go here and decide on the closest approximation of your dimensions. So make sure you don't pick the foot. You want to pick the nearest inch, and that's how you get rid of seeing all of the fractions. So that's absolutely the most important. I also suppressed 0 feet. So if I'm dimensioning a small wall that's only 6 inches, I don't want to say 0 feet 6 inches. I want Revit to just show 6 inches. That's good enough. And it'll save me lots of space for clarity. Okay, you could have alternate units. This is an important thing to know. When I was working with CAD, I only used it once, and boy, was I ever happy. If you go to the meeting in town for building permits for your project, you would have to talk in meters. All of the government officials are working with meters. But if you go to see your client, they most likely will want all the information in feet. For your overall dimensions, for your important stuff, even though it's going to make the drawing messy, that is a great handy thing to have. And you basically put them on. You can put them right or below, so they could be on the side of your imperial dimension, or they can be below. And I would say for your meeting with city officials, it would be a good idea to put them only on, let's say, site plan drawing where you have overall dimensions, okay? I would not apply this to our floor plan. More importantly, if you find that your project is getting too busy, this is, I believe, one default that I have changed. I think that the dimensions were set to 1/8. I don't remember what the default was. You can check your dimension style right now. I am pretty sure I made it 1/16, which is actually smaller than the standard calls for, but I am putting so many dimensions that I don't want to clutter my drawing. So that's one thing you could alter. But you don't have to pick the standard 16th or 1/8. You could go in between. So that's one flexibility that I don't mind if you use. Because we're printing in small scale. I'm printing my project on 11 by 17 sheets in 1/8 of an inch. And if you're printing in smaller scale, Revit is going to beef up the text size so it's clear to read. So the best thing to do for your portfolio, like today, I'm going to print this main floor plan with my settings to see how it looks on paper. So I purposely brought my laptop to school, and I'm going to send with one printer to 11 by 17 sheets so I can see how my dimensions are going to look, because ultimately I need to submit paper copy. And ultimately you will need paper copy to take to your job interview. You can submit our lovely PDF file online to looking for a job in sunny California. But if you're going to job interview in Toronto or Hamilton, you need to take paper copy. So ultimately, all of your drawings need to be set for that. The other reason why I'm going to print my sheet is I printed small sheets at home on 8.5 by 11, and this translucent setting that looks very elegant and cute on my PDF file, it did actually come out very dark. So the renderings that I showed you yesterday, that we're going to work with next week, are actually very dark on the paper copy. They look okay on PDF, but I can't submit them for my application that requires information about materials and the style and plants that I'm going to propose, because they're all black. So if this plan printed on paper comes out dark brown and nothing is showing and you can't see your dimensions, then that's not a good thing. Now, Revit has a couple other things that are unique to Revit only that are worth noting. If I highlight this line that's visible here with my lovely beige, then one of the things that you can alter here is, okay, these are the settings with regards to units, text size, everything else you also can alter. Like I think I was noting yesterday that I would like to reduce the gap, this little gap here between the text and the dimension line. I might want to reduce it. So it's somewhere here. All of these extensions, the text sizes, all of these are under your edit type, the type of the family that you're altering for your for the look. But one thing I want to bring to your attention is this unique to Revit option of having the white background for your dimension. So if you have shading or material map showing, the dimension is basically showing on a white background so you can actually see it. And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not a good thing. Obviously, it's not going to show in black and white. But if you don't want it showing, you simply make it transparent and you say, okay, and now we don't have that white background. So you have to decide whether on your drawing this is called for or not. I find that sometimes on my drawings that is actually distracting. Those white blotches actually don't look good. So I probably will remove them. But then little things like this, you see my tick here is big. So I might, after our class, actually fine tune this so my drawings are as good as they can be for my own presentation. So what else did we talk about? What else did he talk about in the dimensions? Oh, I know. The other thing that we did yesterday is we placed dimension. So if I take dimension and I'll go from this center line to line up with the mid of this door. And you have to be careful because if you click here, it's going to go align because I picked align. Maybe linear would be better to pick here for faster. But if we keep it horizontal and I click on my mid door, oops, I clicked something else. So let's try linear for the, okay, no. So let's stick with our annotate, align. I've never used linear actually. So let's pick here and keep going to this line and then outside in the empty space and enter. Now my dimension is in, and I think because last time I used Revit, it gives me the dimension. But if you click on it, and by the way, what I'm showing you right now is on your quiz 2 question. Okay, so this is a good time to wake up, guys. If you click on this EQ, you can change this note to the contractor, making sure that architecturally, design speaking, this door is placed in the dead center. So turning it on and off, you can specify whether you want to show equal. If you show equal, that the door selection of the door is up for discussion. Okay, but if you put the no slash over EQ, you're getting the actual dimension. The thing here is also that you can have the value, you can have equality text, which you just saw, or you can actually have a formula. So if you go to more advanced dimensioning tutorials that we did not watch yesterday, I will add them. Then you can actually have different formulas for brick calculations. I actually forgot the example that he's used, but there's also ways of doing that. I see something else that I probably might want to alter. I don't have any extension lines, or I make them little, very, very small. You see, I don't have any extension lines going above my extension line, so I might want to alter it. But let's now finish the content of our presentation with actually something that you need to know before you even start dimensions. I placed grid line, but most of you don't have grid line. I placed grid line first. What your drawing should have is overall dimension, and your grid is usually top and left. Your overall dimension should be at the top and on the left or right. And I have jogs in my house, and most of you also have jogs. So you need to know, I know that this is drafting 1 and 2 and your CAD classes, but in case you don't know, I require you to do the proper strings of dimensions. In other words, interior dimensions show strings, continuous strings of walls, and I would suggest you go to center lines. Otherwise, you're going to dimension those 4.5 inches, and they're just going to look very, very messy. I would say on the interior, you can go from the interior face, but then when you get to your typical 4.5 inch partition, dimension everything to center line, which is something the carpenters love anyway. Just making sure that you have your clarities for your bathroom tabs and your showers per required dimensions. if you do that, then your drawing should have under general note somewhere that all typical partitions are 4-inch studs with 1/2 inch or 3/8 drywall on both sides painted. So if you have a general note like that, then you're fine unless otherwise noted. So if you had concrete walls, if you had partitions that are fire rated between one room or the other, or townhouse firewalls, or if you want sound barrier between neighbors, you would say wall types, and you could show wall types in your legend or note those dimensions. And then if not noted, all standard walls will be 4.5 inches with drywall on both sides. So the interior strings, you should have enough of them laid out nice and clear that you will clearly cover up the most important locations of walls. The jog in the kitchen belongs on the outside. So the outside string will show the jogs. I have the grid, so my jog is from center line to center line of the bearing structure of the wall, and that's where I place the grid. If you don't have the grid, you will decide whether you're dimensioning to the outside face of your bearing structure, to center line, or the inside face. Whichever way you do it, make sure that you have overall dimension on the very outside, grid if you have it, then jogs in the wall, and the last string is your openings. So the last string of dimensions is, and I could probably continue with this one, so let's escape. Let's highlight this dimension line. Okay, we got it. And let's edit witness line, and let's just keep going with my dimensions. And you have an option of dimensioning. I have it set to wall openings. I like to control my wall openings. I don't want contractor to decide on size of the building, my windows. If I show center line of that kitchen window, he may give me 2-foot window, and I don't want 2-foot window. I want a 3-foot window. So I like to control the openings, and that's how I set my dimensions. And in the video we watched yesterday, remember that you can also set under options that pop out here, how you want the dimensions to be picked. You can go to center lines of openings. I have it set for openings. So I'll keep going into dimensioning my door. And I have my lines now set on, and watch for those blue lines coming up. Revit knows what you want to dimension, but you want to make sure that you're picking up the right content. And watch that you actually have created the dimension. And then if there is nothing else, double check that you've covered all the corners. And remember, no enter, no escape, click on the empty space. And now I have dimensions that are continuous string. They cover up all openings from jog to opening, wall to the end of jog. That's my first string. My second string is the actual jogs in the walls, because you have to think about different contractors that have to have that information, right? So it's all really common sense. I have grid, which you don't. And I would need to, and that's something I don't want to forget talking about, you also want your strings to look good and line up. From drafting classes, you should know by now that dimensions are about 12 to 10 millimeters apart, and about 10 millimeters when printed from the last object line. So when you're showing the outside scenario, like I'm showing decks and my furniture and the supported structure, it is up for questions whether that 10 millimeters should be from my wall, which is what I decided to do, or last object, which is my deck. Because I'm also tight on my 11 by 17 real estate on my printed page, I've decided to show, for clarity, the outside dimensions for openings close to the actual wall where these openings belong. But then I took the other 2 strings outside, and this is where I would add my overall dimension, which will be, again, annotate and Yes, okay, save the project. It's always to have that reminder. Ooh, the file is getting big now. So my overall dimension in my case is from center to center of the last grid, but I would double check because I also have this additional wall. So if my overall dimension on a site was questioned, I would actually have to include all of it. Now, this is where I'm deciding where to place this dimension line, and notice that I'm eyeballing. You could create construction lines so those offsets are exactly the same, or you can place it and then move them. If I'm going too low, it's not going to be clear one way or the other. I might want to take this dimension now and move it slightly, because it really for overall doesn't matter if it's not 100% in the center. And of course you can go to your edit type and remove the leader lines if you don't want them. Okay, I think we have everything except one more last thing of information. If I have to give someone the absolute information of overall dimension for construction. Like for example, notice that right now I am going from center to center because I made, since last time I showed you this project, I now actually made the plan much smaller, and I'm very far from, this is actually very far from my maximum allowable buildable area on my side. So my red line is my red reminder that those are my offsets, and I know that I'm far from it. So I could actually stay here, or I could help the contractor who is going to do the site layout and say, let's edit this dimension line even further, continue, and start from my offset at 1 foot 8 inches. And that's where my foundation goes. That's where my basement, the concrete wall support structure is going to go. And that's going to be the center line of my bearing structure. And I mentioned to you yesterday that on this particular version, which is, who knows what version I'm on right now, but that I hope is the final version, I have decided to actually work with center lines rather than outside dimension. But if you have to, show the outside dimension, and next semester when you do the commercial construction, most likely you will have to add a small dimension which will say either the outside face or the actually we should go, and this is, I've changed it to thick lines. Let's go to thin lines so we can see a little bit better, and then to see it even better, go to as fine a view as you can make. And somewhere on your drawing there should be, this is just so you know for future, the offset from center line to, and now you can tab to whatever is important on your project. It could be, in my case, the outside face of my studs. So now I'm tying somewhere, and I could add a note to this dimension, and maybe we should do this. If you pick this dimension, right? Remember that we can edit it by clicking on the actual text, and we can't change this to 3. If it's 2, Revit is not going to let you change it to 3. And it's a big departure from cheating in AutoCAD, right? We talked about it yesterday. You can replace it with text, however, right? You can put a text, verify on site, finalize with structural engineers, whatever you need to say. But you can add something below. So I could say that this is my face of stud support wall exterior. So now this is a very, very long note. And okay, it's not looking very good on my project, so I would grab this dimension and actually put it somewhere where it will actually serve also as a note. Now I don't have to add the note, but I have tied the exterior face of my bearing structure to my grid. So if I needed to add the overall dimension, I would add from that exterior face to exterior face Or I can just look at that note, and if I'm sitting at the meeting, my actual dimension will be awfully close to 70. And you could potentially fine tune it. And I think that if I add my exterior finishes, which will be certain thickness of my hardy board and my plywood sheet, and whatever you may have exterior insulation. That's why we don't really dimension as much to the exterior face on residential project, because these elements of the exterior structure are often decided at the construction stage later on, where you're kind of picking out the exterior material. Your contractor may come back and say, well, you know, if you switch to cheap vinyl siding, you can save lots of money. So I think that showing dimension to exterior face on residential project probably does not make much sense. But if I'm sitting at the meeting, I can probably say that I will be within 70 feet overall dimension. Okay? Okay. Is there anything else we should cover that we talked about yesterday and we haven't covered for the people who didn't want to see us today? No? Then we're going to stop, and we're going to try to put out some fires now. If you want a coffee, we can go for coffee. Yeah, I see already hands up. So thank you.